We're looking at an awesome new iteration of the Electra Townie Go, and this is the 7D, so 7-speed derailleur. That's what all that means. I actually covered this bike a couple years ago, and I was impressed because it was affordable. It was a hub motor driven electric bike, whereas most of the other models, they all use like a mid-drives and stuff. So this was designed to be a little bit more affordable, just kind of like simplifies things a little bit. But that older bike had a rear rack battery, which brought some of the weight high, and ideally you want the weight low and centered for stability, for improved balance. It's also the lightest electric bike from Electra, so it's like 45.3 pounds. I weighed it earlier, and I was really impressed because, again, the weight is right where you want it, and that just makes it a lot more approachable for someone who might be new to electric bikes. So they have the Step-Thru with the 26-inch wheels that you see here by 2.35. They're kind of balloon, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more stable. And then if you get the high step model, the wheel size is a little bit different. Instead of 26 inches, it's 27.5. So a little bit taller, it kind of raises the whole frame. And then of course you have the high step, like higher top tube. Those larger wheels, they give you a little bit of a lower attack angle, which could improve comfort a little bit. But again, it just kind of makes the whole frame a little bit bigger, and the frame is different. So I've listed the measurements for both of these bikes back at ElectricBikeReview.com. And I want to point out that the price is the same, about $17.50, which is pretty amazing for a bike that is sold at a dealer where you can get set up and do some test rides and maybe some post-purchase support. Their warranty is like 2-year comprehensive lifetime on the frame, and they're just a little bit more refined than some of the bikes you might get online and sort of have to deal with it yourself. That's the big takeaway for me. It's like you're getting an affordable price relatively, but all of that dealer support and kind of a higher level of quality in some ways. Even though the Step-Thru only comes in one size, we get 5 colors, which is really awesome. I think this is like moonlight gray, really beautiful color here. I like it, and even as a guy, sometimes it's like, oh, I want the high step, I want the darker colors or whatever. For me, I feel really comfortable riding this around, and as someone with like sensitive knee, sensitive hip, I like that it's so approachable. I love that they've preserved the bottle cage mounting points right here, and Electra has so many cool accessories. They got like cup holders and lights, they got rear racks, frame locks, and this thing is set up to handle all of that. So you can have like a cafe lock right here, you can have fenders on this thing, a rear rack which would mount down here. They got you covered with the steel paint match chain cover right off the bat, and they've even got a little plastic slap guard, so I love that. A lot of attention to detail. They've got a chainring guard here, aluminum alloy, and that's going to keep the chain on track a little bit better and maybe give you some bash protection from the bottom if you're going off-road. To me, the biggest highlight of this bike is that, well, you know, the battery. It's low in center, but one of the trade-offs is that you can't take it off the bike very easily. You can remove it and replace it, maybe repair it if you need to, but it's kind of there, you know. It's to get that thing off, you have to take off like the bottom bracket right here. There's like a little plate, maybe work with the shop to do that. And with these batteries, lithium ion is generally what's being used. They last a long time. They're relatively lightweight. I'm estimating about 5 pounds on this thing, but it's a lower capacity battery than the last Townie Go 7D. Instead of like 300 watt hours, this one's 250. So you're maybe getting a little bit of a reduction in range, and then not being able to take it off, whereas you used to be able to slide the pack off. It means that if this is in a hot garage or an extremely cold garage, or maybe there isn't a plug outlet nearby, that's a little bit of a challenge. It's like you got to bring the bike near a plug and then maybe think about how the high or low temperatures could impact the battery. Ideally, you want to keep that thing pretty charged. Maybe check it every few months if you haven't been riding, because if it goes all the way down to 0, that's not great. It's hard on the cells. You're not going to get as many full charge cycles. And there's also a sense that like even below 20%, it's like you're starting to stress those things a little bit. So I wanted to call that out. This is what the charger looks like. 2 amp output, relatively compact. You can remove the wall side to make it even more compact. Only weighs about 1.5 pounds. Then we got this proprietary plug, and it connects right here at the center of the frame. Seems fairly well protected to me. It's got like a little plastic cap, but it's also sort of close to that left crank arm. So if these get bumped and spin like this, it could kind of snag on the cable. You don't want to crack that thing. So I just wanted to point that out. I think it's pretty well executed. Ideally, I think I'd like to have it up here so I didn't have to bend all the way down there. And it's, you know, you're kind of bumping into the bar, you know, but again, it's like, yeah, I think it's an improvement over the other battery. It's about 36 volts 7 amp hours for 250 watt hours. So again, a little bit lower capacity than before, and kind of at the lower end in general, but that's part of what makes the bike more affordable and lighter weight. And because this motor isn't super power hungry either, this is a 250 watt, it's like a planetary geared hub motor from Hyena, I guess, but I think it's custom made for Electra. There's no labeling or anything on this. It's just black. It's really clean with these black spokes and rims and everything. So yeah, 250 watts. They say 40 Newton meters of torque. Combined, this is more about efficiency and kind of a light touch experience. Even the interfaces and stuff, they're very simple. It's very approachable, but still fairly satisfying because it's got a torque and cadence sensing bottom bracket. Some of the other more affordable, just kind of like basic cruiser sort of bikes, they might only have a cadence sensor. So it's just sensing like, you know, are the pedals turning, yes or no, on, off. Whereas this one, it's like, okay, yeah, they're turning, but also how hard is the person pushing? If you want to accelerate, this is going to respond a little bit faster, which to me is awesome. And I actually really like the drivetrain on this. I mean, it's simple, but it gets the job done. Look at this nice, like, integrated crank arms, 170 millimeter length, exactly what you'd expect. That's very standard. And then that aluminum alloy guard on the outside. It'd be nice if there was a guide, like if it had a plate on the inside too, just to really keep that chain on track. But we're probably not going to be going off-road here. There's no suspension fork or anything. By the way, steel tapered fork up there, 100 millimeter hub spacing, very, very standard stuff. The spokes up there, it's 36 holes on the front and rear, but those ones are a little bit narrower. It'd be like 14 gauge, 13 gauge back here, so a little bit stronger, and that's going to support that rear rack a little bit better, and your body weight because of this flat foot geometry we got going here. Okay, so back down to the 42 tooth steel chainring. I feel like, okay, it's good. It's got a natural cadence. The pedals are okay. They're just these plastic with like rubber grip, but that's really affordable to upgrade if you want. And for people who don't, if you slip off, you're not gonna, you know, cut your shins, and they're just not real extreme. They kind of fit the purpose of this neighborhood cruising bike. Back here to the drivetrain that I was complimenting earlier, 14 to 34 tooth 7-speed. That's okay. You know, I've seen like 14 to 28. And you don't have that bigger ring, and that big ring helps you to get started and to climb. So for a bike that it still weighs like 45 pounds, I think this was a really good choice. Very basic, kind of entry-level Shimano Townie derailleur, but at this price point, that's kind of what I would expect. And then we've got a hap grip twist shifter, Revo shift, very intuitive. You've even got like a little window so you can see what gear you're in, and you just kind of twist this to change gears as you're riding. I find that people who don't ride as frequently, that's more approachable and intuitive. Now, one complaint I do have about the drivetrain setup is that you can see the motor power cable right here, right next to the shifter cable. So there's just a little bit extra going on, and because this protrudes, I like that they angled it up versus coming out, because you don't want to snag that or bend it if the bike tipped over or got kicked or something, because if that gets damaged, you're kind of out of luck. You know, you might need a whole new hub motor and stuff. There is a quick disconnect back here for if you need to change the flats or maybe true the wheels or adjust the drivetrain. And this is back to having Trek dealers, basically. Trek and Electra, it's the same parent company, so you've just got a wide selection of places to go to get help. Maybe you don't have to do it yourself. Still, that's a little vulnerable. And I didn't see puncture protection on these tires. In fact, before, I think they were kind of branded, and now they just say CST. They're, you know, a little bit of maybe a step back in terms of just the quality. I would love to see reflective sidewall stripes. I kind of always like to see that. But then again, as a neighborhood bike, I think they kind of get the job done. And they're a balloon tire, so again, a little bit larger diameter for comfort, for stability. And we do have Alex rims, which are really nice. And these are Electra Townie branded wheels. Quick release on the front. You can see some of those threaded eyelets right here for adding fenders, maybe adding a front rack. So many options. And if you go back to the Trek/Electra website, you'll see a lot of the accessories are branded as like Bontrager, and that's like their component brand. It just kind of carries over. They have so many things. I even got a couple of little lights for this bike, which is one of the things the bike doesn't come with. You're going to have to get some like aftermarket, maybe rechargeable, hopefully rechargeable, and then just kind of rubber band them on the bike. But to me, that's a bit of a missed opportunity. I love it when everything can run off the battery. But again, this is sort of a lower capacity battery. So it's sort of a minimalist thing that could be built up. By the way, they say the maximum weight capacity for this bike including the bike, is 300 pounds. So if you subtract the 45 pounds, we're really talking about 250 pounds, about 113 kilograms. And that's very standard. That's what most electric bikes can handle. And I think a lot of people could maybe go for a child seat on like a rack back here. And because we do have all the bosses and stuff, you could get a rack that's rated to like 55 pounds or something, 25 kilograms. So many racks are compatible with this. Back on the official Electra site, they have like a whole chart of like, here's all the racks that would work. And now let's talk a little bit about that flat foot technology. You might have seen that on the Electra website. Like, what does that mean? What they're doing here is they've got this a little bit more aggressive angle on the seat tube. And so the post extends from that, and as it goes up, it kind of goes back. And that's what allows it to have maybe a wider range of fit possibilities. By the way, 350 millimeter length on that, 27.2 diameter. So you could replace that with a suspension seat post. Otherwise, this nice comfort cruiser saddle with the elastomer bumpers, Electra branded, it does pretty well. But the point I'm trying to make, it's like, see how the steer tube is like this, and then the seat tube is a little bit more back. So that creates a little bit more of reach as you raise the saddle. Now the other thing is, down here, we've got the bottom bracket where the crank arms connect. It's not at the base of the seat tube like most other bikes. It's like moved even further forward. So when you're on this, your legs can go up and then down. They don't have to go straight down. And that means you don't have to raise the saddle as much, which means you can kind of put your feet on the ground, possibly, without getting off the saddle. Most other bikes, you have to jump forward to kind of stand over the frame. On this one, the idea is your legs kind of come forward, almost like you're sitting on a chair more than like upright. And that's kind of cool. That's something that was sort of patented by Electra, I think. It really sets them apart, and they're the originators of that. But of course, you see other companies doing it now as well, and just kind of like, you know, curving their seat tube and stuff. But this is the origin. This is the company that really got it started. And it does feel really nice. It's really a relaxing body position. If we look at the stem, this is a Quill stem, so it can actually go up and down. We've got a handlebar that's like a high rise. It comes up a little bit more. I think that's like 100 millimeters right there. And then it even curves back a little bit. So you can imagine rotating this front and back. You'd extend or subtract on that reach again. And we've got this nice kind of ergonomic body position, very upright, relaxed, comfortable. 25.4 millimeters, by the way, on this handlebar. It's a little bit narrower, and even the Quill stem, this is like not mountain bike stuff. This is very cruiser, kind of almost old-fashioned a little bit. Basic rubber grips, but it's nice that they tied them in, get the brown saddle, brown grips. Some of the other bikes have, you know, black saddle, black grips. So they've done a good job matching all around. And then the brakes, these are 4-finger mechanical brake levers. They do not have motor inhibitors, which for a hub motor, I was like, oh, I'm kind of surprised they don't have it. But then when I realized it was partially torque sensing, it made sense, because as soon as you like ease off even a little bit, the motor cuts out pretty quickly. And we're only talking about 250 watts. So, you know, in some ways it's like, okay, that keeps things simpler up here, fewer wires than on some other bikes where you got lights and a big display and motor inhibitors and stuff. This is just simple and clean, but they are internally routed, really nice. And then they've kept those larger disc brake rotors. So 180 millimeter rotors, they could have gone with 160, but this gives you a better mechanical advantage over the, you know, the taller wheels, especially the 27.5 and then the wider 2.35 inch tires. I think it was the right decision. Mechanical brakes, and these say radius, they're a little bit easier to adjust yourself. However, they require a bit more hand effort to actuate, especially the right brake, which goes all the way back here to the rear. So it's just longer, and the wire can kind of bed into the housing, and just, you know, even the way this is situated right here, water could land on this, or dewdrops can form, and then it just sort of like goes into that tube, and it just gets gummed up over time. So I'm a big fan of hydraulic brakes, but they're harder to adjust yourself. They cost more money. So, you know, I understand the compromise that was made here. If we look at the rear, the hub spacing is about 135 millimeters versus 100 up front. This is very standard. And then we've got just a threaded, it's like a 12 millimeter slotted axle. So it slots into this 6061 aluminum alloy frame, and it kind of pushes against the frame to create pressure to move the bike forward. There's no torque arm here or anything, but again, it's kind of a basic minimalist motor, and I don't think it's necessary. We've just got a bolt there and then a little rubber protector. 18mm spacing on the bolts for that kickstand. And I like that the kickstand here is kind of far back in the rear. It's not a center stand that could create pedal lock, especially if you're walking this out of your garage like this and the pedals kind of cycle backwards. So nicely done. Even the kickstand is black, which is beautiful. The whole thing really comes together nicely. And to me, it's a really complete package. A couple of other quick trade-offs. The clamp designed for the saddle where it connects to the saddle rails. This seat post is tapered at the top, and you've got these nuts up here. This is more difficult to adjust. I prefer the mountain bike setup to this, and it's just a little bit more screwing around. Not my favorite design. And then compared to the other version, it was nice to have a rear rack with the bike, but then again, part of the capacity was taken up by the battery, like 5-6 pounds. So in this case, if you do add a rear rack, at least you're gonna get full capacity. And then another thing that one had that it's kind of disappeared is there was a USB charging port on the bottom of the button pad display unit. So we don't have that anymore. And again, we aren't running lights. There's really the only thing the battery's doing is running the motor. And given that they're both kind of minimalist, I think that makes sense. But if you do see one of the older versions of this and you're like trying to decide, those are some of the things you might think about. Maybe you get a deal on kind of the older generation bike. So as a recap, steel parts on this bike include that fork, that paint match chain cover, and then the chain ring down here, which is just standard teeth. It's not narrow wide or anything fancy like that. I'm calling this out because if those components or parts of the bike get scratched a little bit, they can rust, whereas the rest of it's all aluminum alloy. So just kind of keep an eye on that. You can use clear nail polish or car paint to touch it up, but it is such a unique and beautiful color. It's just nice to try to keep these things looking good. Before filming this bike, I spent a lot of time at the shop studying the little details for this and looking at some of the optional accessories. I saw a really cool plastic bag, like front bag, really bright colors. They have beautiful bells. They've got additional reflectors and the lights and stuff. They've got some fun helmets, locks, and baskets. For me, this company is sort of about fun and cheerfulness, and I really appreciate that. Okay, so once you've got the bike all charged up and you're ready to go, you're gonna come up here to the display to boot the bike up. The first thing you do is hold the power button there. You have to hold it for a couple seconds, and then you get a little battery charge level readout. So there are 5 dots here. Each one represents a 20% step, and they don't flash like that. That's just because my camera capture rate is conflicting a little bit with these little LEDs. So they're just solid. We've got 3 out of 5 right now, so 2, 4, 6, so it's like 60% full. And then there's another line of LEDs next to it that will turn on when we start to push the plus and minus button. So plus, we go to assist level 1, plus again, assist level 2, plus again, assist level 3. That's the highest level of assist. It's that simple. You turn the bike on and then choose how much assistance you want. And I've actually had a lot of fun riding this without assistance because it's light and because we have that taller 34 tooth sprocket in the rear as an option. Now, I have heard that there's a possibility there might be a smartphone app at some point, but it's not out right now. I don't know what that would look like or if that's true. So I just want to call it out as being a possibility. And that would really make this bike special because at this price range, kind of just a little bit below 2,000, there really aren't that many e-bikes that have, smartphone apps. And I wonder what that would let you do if you'd like dial in the motor or be able to maybe get like a speed readout or something, GPS. That would be nice. Imagine you have a phone holder here and you get more information back, because as it stands, you don't know how fast you're going. You've only got kind of a rough estimate of how much battery capacity is left. There's no range estimate. There's no like average speed or cadence, any of those things. It's just very, very basic. But for some people and in some situations, that's nice. It's not too distracting. You're not going to get caught up in what the display says. You can enjoy your surroundings and enjoy your friends and stuff. These LEDs are fairly bright though. I think you can swivel this a bit so that they're not shining right into your eyes, but I have occasionally used like a piece of blue tape or whatever just to kind of mute the LEDs at night, so they wouldn't blind me. Yeah, you can see I'm twisting that a little bit. The other really cool feature that I discovered here is this does have walk mode. Now, most of the time for e-bikes, to get walk mode going, you hold minus. And in this case, that's kind of true. You hold minus for a second, and then it starts giving you this little like dot, dot, dot. Did you see that it was like walking through? So there's 2 steps here. You hold minus and then you hold plus. And when you do that, the bike will push itself, which is really handy if you've got it loaded with groceries or a child. You get to a situation where it's just too crowded or steep and you don't want to ride the bike, but you also don't want to have to push 45 pounds. So that's cool. I'm glad we figured that out. And now maybe it's time for a fun little ride. I'm a big fan of the high levels of assist because it's fun to just zip around. I like to feel the power from these bikes when I'm testing them. It does make a little bit more noise and you're gonna limit your range. They say up to 40 miles per charge. I'm estimating, 20 to 40 depending on what level of assist. But since it's a torque sensing system, it does require you to exert yourself a bit more for that quick acceleration, and that is going to extend your range. So we'll just kind of go with that and take off here. Kind of kicks into power. There we go. Feeling good. I like to do this no hands test to see how the bike tracks. Feels good. I think the wider tires are part of that. And then just the angle of that head tube, and the fork is raked out a little bit as well. If you look at my legs, I mean, that's that flat foot position. And if I stop, I can put this foot down without getting off the saddle. So that's it. That's flat foot in action right there. And then when I'm ready to go, I can just push forward. It takes a little bit of a second there and it kicks in. Very cool. And then the brakes, they don't cut the power. You have to stop pedaling, otherwise you'll be fighting the motor. But it gets the job done. Just go off this curb here. Pretty quiet and tight. A little bit of a jingle sound there because I think the chain bounced into the steel chain cover. Let's see if we cross it up over here. Such a nice place to ride. Beautiful. That's that upright body position. You can talk to your friends and spot your surroundings really nicely. So now I'm gonna take it down to a lower level of assist and experiment with the shifter here, just show you what that's like. I find that it works best if you're pedaling gently, so it's not putting a lot of strain on the drivetrain. You just twist it a little bit like that. That's gonna give us a faster cadence, easier for climbing in the low gears. And then if we wanna get those higher speeds and slow the cadence, just twist it forward. And the brakes are working pretty well. One hand, come to a complete stop here, and able to take off into the next section of road. I can hear the motor whining a little bit. But I'd say overall it's pretty quiet. Again, that's the lowest level of assist. Pretty easily turn that off and the bike is still fun to ride. It is a class 1 electric bike, meaning it's permissible on the most number of trails and locations, which is fun. There are other cruisers out there that tend to be heavier. They've got the fenders, the racks and stuff included. And some of them have throttles. That makes it class 2. And it's worth considering. But again, the trade-offs are usually cost and a little bit more clutter, complexity, and then maybe, riding in certain places, you're kind of bending the rules a little bit. So I can appreciate this. Okay guys, from here you can see that steel chain cover, 42 tooth steel chain ring up front, and then 14 to 34 tooth gear cluster in the rear 7-speed. I'm going to shift through the gears. We'll be riding in the highest level of assist, and I'll go off some curbs and stuff so you can just hear the different sounds. Let's go. Pretty good. could definitely hear the chain bumping into that chain cover a little bit going up and down the curbs. Even when I shifted to the lowest gear, which is the tallest sprocket, trying to bring that chain away from the, well, I guess I was bringing it away from the chainstay, but bringing it closer to the cover. And now I'm in the highest gear, and it's as far as it can get from the cover. I think that's just part of the deal. And it's so nice to have this protecting your skirt or your pant legs. You know, I'm wearing jeans today and don't want to get those ripped up and greasy and stuff. And yeah, it's really nice to have a satisfying torque cadence sensor system here. It's definitely more natural and responsive than even some of the better pure cadence only electric systems that I've tested. So I'm liking this. I think Electra's done a good job here. Thank you. Hey, thank you so much, man.
No problem.
I appreciate it.
It's one of my best works.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'll put you in the credits. Have a good day. Well, guys, I think that's about it. It's really fun to see Electra refining their electric bikes, you know, improving the balance, reducing the weight, and just still keeping the style and those accessories and the fun. I love that they've got a couple different versions of this bike, and that they chose to do more colors for the Step-Thru. That way, you know, guys and girls can kind of feel comfortable with that. I especially like this particular color. I want to thank Trekco Quitlam because they're letting me borrow this today, and the rain let up and it's just gorgeous out. Perfect day to go for a ride. For the full written review on this, including all the specs that I measured by hand and just a lot of details, check out ElectricBikeReview.com. There's also a comparison tool, so you can see kind of the older version with the rear rack compared to the new one. And there's forums, so you can talk to people who maybe they've owned this bike. They aren't just out on it for a day or two like I am. They can give you feedback about which accessories work, or maybe third-party stuff that they preferred. I love you guys. I hope you have fun out there. Ride safe, and we'll see you next time.